Hi everybody, welcome to this video where we're going to learn a little bit about the art of collage. Collage is a form of visual arts where elements are combined to create a new image, to tell a story, get a message across, or an idea. And collage comes from a French word that means to glue. So artists past and present use this technique to express themselves. Paper collage is a type of collage that is specific to the Cubist movement, with artists such as Picasso and Braque and Juan Gris using this technique. Matisse used this technique to make large cutouts when he was bedridden in his later years. The Dada art movement, Surrealism, also embraced this collaging technique along with mid-century pop art. One thing that's unique about collaging that it branched away from using just one type of material to create an art image, such as oil painting. Oil painting has rules of the way you mix the mediums or how you paint this way, but with collaging you could break the rules, and that was kind of revolutionary in the art field. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on collaging as well, paper collage, as well as other types of collaging, such as photomontage and assemblage. We're going to do some exercises. We'll be looking at composition and talking about some of the elements of art, principles of design, and how they apply to collaging. So get your papers ready and we will get started, and I hope you have fun. Are some of the items that you might want to collect to do some of these exercises that I'm going to have for you. It's pretty simple, really. I mean, you're going to need scissors to cut paper, something to glue with, so that could be Elmer's glue stick, or my favorite is the matte medium. You'll need some kind of papers that we're going to create our own collage papers, but something that's thin enough. It could be just notebook paper. Here's just copy paper, and this is tissue paper, and this is tissue paper that I just got from the dollar store, so it's not anything real expensive. You also will need some magazines to look through so that you can cut different images or patterns or textures out of magazines. And really that's about it. Oh, one more thing. I would say if you're whatever you're going to create your collage onto needs to be a little stiffer paper. So this is a little, I just bought a ream of a little heavier cardstock, and I can go ahead and create and put glue on this, and it won't ripple quite as bad as if you use just a thin paper. So really that's about it. Let's get started and have some fun. Let's start by making some collage papers. The artist Eric Carle was an author of children's books and also an illustrator, and I love his illustrations. He was a collage artist, and the way he made his papers, you can see some of this, he created his own papers, and we're going to start off by creating some of our own papers just to see what we come up with. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. What I heard about him was that he created lots of paper at one time. He would put all of his maybe yellows and oranges in one stack. He would sort them by color. And then when it came time to do these illustrations, he could just kind of pull the colors he needed. I know that he did a lot of his paper creating, collage paper creating on tissue paper. And it's pretty thin. This is tissue paper. The thing I'm doing with tissue paper is putting something under it because I know it will seep, the paint will seep through and it will stick. So you don't want to do this on paper. Instead, I went to the dollar store and I got some of these little plastic sheets. I got 5 in a package for $1. And I just continue to use these, and I can wipe off very easily. I just kind of taped it in place here, and then when I'm finished with this color, I can just put this aside and then get another piece of tissue paper or another paper that I want to do and tape it onto another piece of plastic. But first of all, let's start with this one. And in a little bit, I'll show you some other collage papers that you can use. Let's see, I think I'm just going to start off with, it looks like he did a lot of layering. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of this kind of orangey red color. And I've got a brayer. Now I could take a paintbrush, but I think I'm going to just do this with this, lightly with this brayer. And you can see how I've coated all of that. I'm just going to come in and start putting that color down. And if the paint's not thick enough, you can come in and add more. I noticed on some of his papers that he made and collages, he might have taken the end of a paintbrush, the backside of a paintbrush or a pencil, and drawn into it. He made marks. But this is something just kind of simple. And what I might do next is put a different shade of red. This is kind of an orangey red. So maybe I'll come in to create some layers and put another shade of red on here, and then we'll see what layers we come up with. So here's my paper as I've added some yellows, some oranges, some reds, and you can see how it kind of comes through on the back side. I'm going to set that aside right now so it can dry. And I want you to think about what can you use to make collage papers. You can use, oh my goodness, notebook paper. And on all of this, you notice that I'm picking and choosing paper that is not super, super thick. You can make thick collage papers, but it's just much harder to glue down. And I think sometimes having the transparency of different colors you can overlap that maybe are on tissue paper or on, this is something called deli paper. This is something I just ordered on Amazon. I'll show you the package for this. This is like heavy duty wax paper, but it's like tissue paper. The only difference is a little sturdier. It's got a wrinkle in the middle, but you can kind of smooth that out. So you can do all kinds of things with this. But if you're just trying to grab things around the house, you know, here's paper from the copier. Here's lined notebook paper. Here's some old graph paper I had. I could use that within itself as part of collage, or I could paint over it. So I want you to see how many different options there are. And this is just kind of a playtime for you to come and find some things and play with it. On some of these, you may put thicker paint. And if you do that, you can, like we saw before, you can kind of go ahead and draw into it with a pencil. Let me try that out a little bit here. If I want to put, I think on this one, I'm going to use my fat brush, and I want to put, I'm going to put, this is just a green blue deep. It's just acrylic paint. And I think I'm going to brush it on. And as I brush that on, I can flip it over and make marks through it. I can make it look like it has texture. I could brush this whole color on, put another color on top of it, then brush through it or scrape through it with a pencil or a brush handle and see some of the color underneath. So I might actually try that here just a little bit. I'll let that dry first. I could come in and stamp. I could use different stamps that I might have made or things that you purchase, and you can stamp on your papers. The sky's the limit, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm going to make a few pieces here on different substrates and then come back and show you what I did. Here I've been working on some papers. I wanted to show you some things I've come up with. I took an old, gosh, this This was an old book I found somewhere, probably at a thrift store. I took an old dictionary that had pages out of it, and they're just a nice weight for collaging. And I painted on them. Some of them are transparent colors. You can still see the type through it a little bit or a lot. And here's some of that. I took a little tiny brush with black paint, and I just started dipping it in the acrylic paint and making circles and curves. And once this dries, I'll be able to cut out sections of it to use in a collage. I may not use that whole piece as is, but I can cut out sections. Then on this one, I went ahead, well, here's another one, black and white. I did the same thing with some stamping, and I had a stencil that I went ahead and just stamped around it to get that design and texture. On this one, I just took a brush and just started making marks. When that dries, keep in mind this is like the deli paper, so when it goes over another color, this white part of the paper is going to become translucent or transparent, and you'll be able to see a layer through and behind these little blue marks. And on this one, I don't know, I was just trying to do something with blue paint, and I took one of these that you find, a notch spreader that you find at the thrift store, and I was dragging that through there, just seeing what I could come up with. If you notice on this, see, I could even keep doing that and then do that over here and come up with some marks. If you notice, I've been using acrylic paint, and the reason is because if you're going to be using glue and getting this, your collage papers wet again, you don't want something that will bleed. And if you use watercolors or something that bleeds, you may not want that. So I try to use acrylic, thin down acrylic, whatever, just so that it will stabilize on the collage papers and you won't have to worry about, for instance, that black line. If I use something that was water soluble and spread glue over it, it would probably smear everything. But once this is dry, it will be stable. Another quick look at what I'm doing with the real thin tissue paper. The first 2 or 3 coats, remember I did orange, red, and a little yellow, and those have dried, but then I thought, well, I'm going to use an oil pastel, and I'm going to come in and just make some little hatch marks. Not real hard, but just something to give it a little more depth. And once again, this is oil pastel. It's not water soluble. So if I put glue over it, it is not going to bleed. So that's kind of fun, just to keep adding layers to your collage pieces. So let's say you're getting ready to start your collage. This scene is enough that could make me just go over the edge. When you get your collage material together, I'm going to suggest organizing. Now, the first thing that I did was, and this, I've collected stuff like this just through the years. I might see, I had an old catalog and I saw pictures I cut out. I created some papers on deli paper. I found the inside of envelopes that had a neat texture to them. I had some old patterns and I've pulled those out. You can use those in collage. I found an old letter, and I didn't cut up the actual letter, but I made a color Xerox copy of it, and I can cut that out for collage materials. I found type. Just finding all kinds of big words, little words, painting over them, all kinds of collage possibilities. This is where I took some pictures, and I took my, I went to a copier and put the pattern pieces on top of an image, so it would be haze it back, just for something different. Just all kinds of things that you can find. We looked at this earlier with even graph paper. So this is what I'm going to suggest. Before we start doing exercises, I would say that get your collage papers and sort them. Different ways you can do that. You might have some folders, little envelopes like this. Maybe you put things in there and you have them labeled. You might use some of these plastic sleeves that you use in notebooks. Keep a notebook. Maybe these are, you know, different colors, different patterns, whatever, but you've got some kind of organization. You could take just old file folders, and I went through and I was doing some stuff and I organized some of these by color. This is kind of what I was talking about with Eric Carle, what he did, just going through and kind of organizing some of this. Then you can also, let me show you this. You can go to the hobby store and you can get these that are just, you know, a couple inches thick, like for scrapbooking. And you can have these that you can just stack up and pull out one. It's a certain color you're looking for. That just helps, I think that helps organize things a little better. Otherwise, I can't even process how to do a collage or how to do a piece of art if I've got this much stuff out. So let's go ahead and get your pieces organized. I'm going to get my pieces organized. And before we do an actual collage exercises, I wanted to show you also the type of things that I use to glue pieces down. I like matte medium, and it's low gloss. I buy this at the art store, and then I'll show you how to use this, how you can glue things down. You can also use glue sticks. Glue sticks are great. You can use Elmer's glue if you wanted to. With Elmer's glue, and if you squirt this out, you need some way, it might be a credit card or a piece of cardboard, but some way that you can smooth it so you don't end up with just bubbles all over your paper. So there's lots of different ways that you can glue things down. Go ahead, sort. I'm going to sort some things, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about some exercises that we can do. Okay, let's start with our first exercise. What I did was I went through a bunch of my papers and I just pulled out some colors that I knew I liked together, and I have some of the orangey colors. I love the teal blues, maybe some dark values with the blacks. I pulled out just different shades of kind of greeny blues and kind of an orangey color. And then my black and whites if I wanted to add something like that. So that's not too overwhelming. And what we're going to do with this first exercise is, I'm thinking back when I was in school, and I know when the teacher would say, let's create a collage. There was no definition of what it was and how to do it, and it was pretty much just cut pictures out of magazines and slap them on all over the place, and it didn't have any rhyme or reason. One thing that I like to think about in a collage or any kind of painting, any kind of artwork, is composition. And there's variety and there's unity, and there's a fine line between those two. And I like to think of variety as being different, but not so different that the whole piece is chaotic. So what we're going to do today is just take a piece of paper, and what I have done is I took a cardstock and just taped it down. And I divided it just real lightly into 4 quadrants. And what you're going to do is try to find a way to make each of those 4 quadrants different and have variety, yet have unity as one whole piece. And what I'm going to use is, I think I've shown you this, is the matte medium. You could use anything else. There's Mod Podge. If you have that on hand, you could use that. But I'm just going to go for the matte medium. I've got a brush. I've got scissors. I can cut. I can tear. I can do anything with this. So in the first part of this exercise, I'm going to take those 4 sections or 4 quadrants of this page and make them different. The only thing that I'm starting with that might have a similarity to it is that I chose some colors I like, so I still am I kind of lean toward warm and cool. But in general, I'm just kind of going to put things down for each quadrant, and I'm not going to worry about them connecting right now. And then once I get that done, we'll look at it and kind of figure out, what do I need to do? How can I make this whole piece connect? And remember, this is just kind of me thinking about when I was in school and all we did was just kind of dump things on a page. I'm trying to think of things that might be different but might have similarities. That's kind of what I'm after. So I'm just going to start gluing some things down, cutting, tearing, however I want to do this. And I'll get some of these made. I'll put something in all 4 of those sections and then come back and we'll kind of analyze it, take a look at it, and talk about how I can actually unify them. So this is what I've got so far, and I'm going to say this is a mess. It's in 4 sections. Well, that's what I wanted to do, so that's fine. But now, how do you unify something like this? How do you take all these clippings, paper clippings, and make it look unified? Remember I said that having a variety is really wonderful, but you don't want it to be chaotic. And this is chaotic. I don't know where my eye is supposed to go, where I'm supposed to look, or anything. So here are some things to consider. First of all, I started out, I do have kind of a similar color family. I've got some of my blues and aquas in these here, and then I've got some of the burnt oranges. But I don't have some of the oranges down here. Perhaps I can bring some of those colors in. And I wish that we were in person and I could ask your opinion of what to do and I could hear your answers. But right now, we're not, so let's go ahead and see what I can do here. I'm also, and I haven't planned this out, so I'm kind of just doing this along the way. But I noticed that here is a curve, like a half circle. Here's a curve, like a half circle. Some of these, that mark has a curve to it. That could be something that I decide to continue. Here's a line that's nice and straight. Well, what if that line, I did something with that line that came up in here and it connected? I may decide to do that. So right now, I almost think I'm gonna, oh, the other thing is to violate some of these boundaries. So I've got this, 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 and this. Well, I can go over some of those boundaries. I don't have to have it to where the two are, where the object I'm putting down stays within that boundary. So maybe I'll start and do that right here. Okay, that may be a start in the right direction. I'm noticing some of this, some of the angular marks here. I wonder if I could do something like that over here. I'm thinking, what if I took the black? I've got a half circle. What if I took the rest of that half circle and made an outline, and perhaps that goes down here. You can make it fit correctly, but have that kind of echo into the next quadrant. So once again, let me work on this, then I'll come back and show you what some of my solutions were. So one last look at my 4 quadrants and how I managed to unify the whole piece. I don't think this is perfect, but I was able to come in and get some of the orange color. So through color, I was able to create a unity. I found where we had some lines in here, and I started adding lines. It almost looks like a architectural, like a map looking down on something. I started mimicking some of the curved edges that I saw. I violated the quadrant by going over those lines. And I made sure that each one had something in it that the others had that could pull it all together. So this is the end project on that one. This is another one I did that had the 4 quadrants, and I tried to pull all of those together to make it into one piece. So just some fun exercises to do. Here's the same exercise where I used 9 squares instead of 4. I used circle and curvilinear shapes, and I created unity within one piece. The next one is where I decided to use angular shapes and create unity within those 9 pieces. And then this last one is a Rauschenberg, where you can see that there's some division in the piece, but he's pulled it all together and unified it with color and mark making. A strata composition is where you take strips of, in this case, papers, and you build some type of, I like to think of it as a rhythms. Either, I'm doing this vertically right now, but I could go up from the bottom like that. I could make this whole piece horizontal. Some of the samples I showed you, I actually saw this in terms of landscapes, and so I created the strata of land and strips of land and fields as it went across horizontally. I think this one, instead of doing it horizontally, I'm going to do it vertically. And I just started tearing papers, and I'm thinking, how am I going to build some kind of rhythm going across here? I can't make each piece the exact same size. Some are going to be bigger, some are going to be smaller and thin. That's the variety we were talking about. I may have a surprise color in there somewhere. I may have something like, well, I'm just even looking at, this isn't long enough, but this type of type from a magazine is really neat with the big fat letters, and when you cut them, you don't have to see that word. You can end up with something like a little strip that you can't really tell what the letters are, but it creates some kind of pattern. So I may use that on part of this. I'm kind of thinking about complementary colors with kind of the red orangey colors along with shades of green. So kind of a complementary color field. And then I'm thinking about contrast. I'm thinking about rhythm as I go across and what's going to draw my attention in here. So I'm going to start gluing, and I will be right back to show you what I come up with. Okay, let's take a look at what I've been doing here. As you can tell, I kind of tried to put a couple places of green. I put some neutrals. I have type. I have large pieces that you can't tell quite what it is, and the writing is here, and then some larger pieces here. That gives kind of a rhythm. But right now, it bothers me that there are 2 pieces of green and 2 pieces of the dark black. And I always like compositions to be something in threes. And that's just me, but so I'm thinking about this piece right here is something that it's got the same green in it, but it's gonna have a little show through. It's gonna be a little transparent because it's on a tissue paper. So I'm thinking about going ahead and gluing some of that on. to add some more green to the picture. And you can tell that when I get the matte medium under and over it, you can tell that it turns kind of translucent, and you can see what's underneath it. And right now my paper is rippling a little bit. I could have used a Bristol board, some kind of cardboard to do this, since I'm doing all the wet glue on here, but it eventually will dry out, and then I can lay some books on top of it and kind of press it into place. So let's say that I put that on there, and that helps a little bit. Now I feel like I need something warm. I've got a little bit of the warm brown over here. I either need some darker thin line in there, or maybe even, let me lay this down for a minute, a small thin strip of this red orange. That might be just the highlight that is needed. That is the variety I'm talking about. It kind of pops. And if I did that, it's not quite long enough, I can cut another piece. If I did that at a diagonal, that might have an interesting effect. So once again, let's see, I'm gonna play around with that a little bit and see what I come up with the contrasting complementary type colors together, but not adding too much of the red, just a little bit. So coming back to this one, I decided to do something a little different. And this is, when I think about composition, I think about repetition. I was telling you before, I like to work kind of in sets of threes. So with this, I've got, you know, kind of the red orange right here, here, and here. And then instead of doing another line, I decided to mimic and echo some of the circles. We've got the large circles here. We've got the little stamped circles here with green. And then I decided to cut out some of the red-orange circles. And I kind of think I'm liking this. So we're gonna let this one go for now. I kind of think this is working. Here are 3 collages that I've done using the strata technique. And notice how there's a strong reference to landscapes with this. I've cut paper, torn paper, but I'm kind of looking at this from a landscape standpoint. This last one shows such a difference in scale that I was working with that type of element of art. The next thing that we're going to do is a photo montage. And so what I want you to get ready, and the supplies I want you to have, are to go and find any magazines that you might have. You might need to go to the thrift store if you haven't saved any. I just have sometimes a little stack of magazines, and then I go through and I start choosing. I start finding things that interest me. I start cutting them out, you know, something like that. Something like the chairs, a large cat. I'm just looking for any kind of object or person that might get my attention. Maybe I want to cut out from this catalog some shoes or this lady. What we're going to do is put some of these pieces together to make a photo montage, and sometimes it's the fun juxtaposition of things put together that has kind of humorous effect. It can make a statement. So you might choose objects that have a similar theme to them. I'm going to choose some pieces, and then I'll come back and we can get started on this. Okay, so with the photo montage, I went through magazines, like I was asking you to do. Went through magazines, and I started just finding interesting textures and colors, patterns, anything like this that I could use in my photo montage. And instead of just limiting the photo montage to only pictures that I found, I also included some papers that I painted that were in the right color family. I'm kind of thinking of creating something in a sky like this, and I found some images to put in here, but I want to create sky and land, and I'm going to kind of use that same technique that we were doing earlier with the striated land and sky forms. That was kind of fun to me, so I want to do that. So, you know, if I just started kind of laying these pieces here, maybe the land is down here, I can overlap. However I want to do this. I like the idea of warm and cool colors conflicting or being, well, I say conflicting. There are opposites on the color wheel, the warms and cools, but they have a unity that can bring the whole thing together. So, you know, I'm going to just spend some time gluing here. Let's see where this is going to take me. And once again, this is the neatest thing because I don't have any glue on this right now, and I can just lay all these pieces out, say, oh, I want to change this. I don't like that there. I'm going to move it. And I can do that. This is something that with collage, you're not putting down paint. And until I decide that's how I want it, I'm probably going to keep moving my pieces around. So let me work on this just a little bit, and I'll come back and show you how far I've gotten. Okay, I am almost finished with my photo montage, at least the background part. I've taken all kinds of magazine clippings and papers from a similar color family for the ground part, and then once again a similar color family for the sky. And notice, even the way I'm doing this, we did that composition exercise with the the stripes, the land formations, maybe even in the sky, and I'm starting to see some of that come out in this composition. So I think I'm ready to add some other things to it. And as I was going through a magazine, I came up with, I saw this picture that I liked, and then I saw this gigantic cat. And I saw this plant that's so big for that tiny little table. So with a photo montage, I'm kind of looking at the juxtaposition of these items. There's still, you know, these items I cut from the magazine still have some of the color family characteristics, which provide some kind of unity for the piece. But the juxtaposition of this super gigantic cat kind of looking down at these two tiny chairs with this big pot of potted plant was just kind of funny to me. So as you're looking for your images, think about symbolism, think about maybe it's just humor, just have fun with it. I think this is a fun exercise, and I hope you enjoy it. And these first three images that you see, these are photo montages that I did in a sketchbook. And all of them have symbolic language to them. Some of them have words, some of them don't. But I tried to find images that would relate to each other and have some kind of visual story. This one is by Robert Rauschenberg, where he has used art to express his political voice. In this last one, David Hockney has used photo montage to create a quilt-like appearance in the landscape. Let's take a look at the assemblage collage technique, or assemblage. People pronounce it different ways, I guess. But this is something that it becomes slightly relief sculpture. This can be done so many different ways. Sometimes you might make something and it has a relief. It has something that has depth to it that's included in the flat type of collage. And sometimes people will put this in a shadow box. They will put it in a frame, or it could be a book format, depending on how flat or how raised the surfaces are. So what I did, and this is the exercise I want you to do, is go around and find something to make a background. Find something in your, maybe your magazines or pictures or drawings you've done that would be some kind of subject matter. What I found a picture of a bird. And this was from an old school book. I think I got it at a thrift store and I had just made copies. And what I did was I cut it out and I mounted it on cardboard. And the cardboard I had was a cereal box to make it easy to cut. I glued it all down and I was raising it with, it's not quite glued yet, it's not quite dry, but little pieces of wood. And then what I'm going to do at some point, when this is dry, is attach this wherever I want to place it, and it's going to be raised. I'm going to use, what is the theme of a bird? The outdoors and nature. I found some of the kind of a woody type paper that I had, little scraps of it. Maybe I'll glue something like that on there. I've got burlap that I can add and glue on. I've got lace that I can put on to see through, to see the music through the lace fabric. I've got, this is something I made a long time ago. I just found it in a scrap drawer, and it was with some kind of air dry clay, and it's like, well, why not? I could put that on there. I found little leaves that like charms that I had. You could use buttons. You can use just anything that you might find around the house. Anything. I even thought about putting this on there, these little tiny canvases, maybe drawing a picture of a bird and then attaching that somewhere on there. But the whole idea, I'm trying to kind of encapsulate the essence of nature and birds and music, and I'm trying to find things that will do that, and I'm putting things on here that aren't all flat, that will be raised up. Now when you use glue with this, I would say that well, any kind of glue for the paper, that's fine. Glue stick, I use glue stick on this. I did this on a hard, heavy cardboard. And when I start gluing these other pieces down, I think I'm going to probably either use one of two things. Either a glue gun, a hot glue gun, or I could try using a tacky glue that would be be thicker and have better adhesive. So those are just some ideas and some things you can do, and I think this is a fun project. I'm going to work on this a little bit and come back and show you what I come up with. Okay, let's take a look at what I completed with this collage, assemblage collage. I added all kinds of things to it, and I used a hot glue gun. You can still see some of that is stringing on there. I went through and I stamped. I had some stencils of leaves, and I just did a real light stamping over some of the background, and then I attached some of these pieces. I got little tiny birds that I found, and like I said, that little bit of kind of a wood type paper that I tore. I found a little rock. I found just a little spot of green I could put on there. So I just started adding things, and this is super fun to do. I mean, you find things in your house, magazines, ephemera, craft stores, and these are kind of fun to make. And like I said, you can make them to fit a shadow box and then actually hang them up. This one is just an odd size, so I probably won't do anything with it. Another thing that I did on a similar note was, this was some time ago, where I took, it's mixed media collage. It's on fabric, and I painted it, and I took paper, and I took other pieces of fabric, and you can see some of the texture there, the patterns. I stamped on it. Then I took the fabric and I stitched along, and here's some paper. I did some stitching on it, and then I mounted it to a cradle panel board, and I used my matte medium, and I pressed books on it, got it on there really tight, left it overnight, and then I was able to have that adhere to the board. So have fun with this. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned a lot about the art of collage. I feel like we've covered a lot of territory. We've looked at photomontages. We've looked at different types of composition, unity and variety, how to work with striations, the strata composition. We've looked at assemblage or assemblage and how to work with different sizes and depths of materials. I would suggest that you just continue saving things, organizing your materials, and have lots of fun with scissors, paper, and glue.